Hello again, this is Pastor St. Thomas coming to you guys with another transmission. I will be addressing the Rabbi again, and he has more questions, and I got more.
High priest who is the brother of Moses. The problem is, how did Jesus come from a priestly family? You can't be from the house of David and be from a priestly family. You can't be both. You can't have two.
Okay.
The passage in Micah, Micha, it's his real name, lived at the exact same time as Isaiah during the Assyrian Empire, same time as Hosea, except Micha was in the south with Isaiah. So Micha tells us that the Mashiach is somebody who is a descendant of the person who comes from Bethlehem, who heralds from Bethlehem. From you will come forth a ruler of Israel, and this is what's key, Umaytsoisov, and his going forth. That means, how is the Messiah connected to Bethlehem? So it says that Mikedem Mimei Olam. The connection is Mikedem means, Kedem means from earlier times, like when you say Ani Kodem, which means I'm first, I'm ahead. Mimei Olam, from ancient days. And as it turns out, the Christian Bibles play a game, because if you don't have the words Mimei Olam together, and you take the word Olam by itself without the modifier, so the word Olam could mean forever. It doesn't necessarily have to mean forever. It could be like in the case of Hannah, promising that her son Samuel will serve forever, Olam, but that means for a lifetime. But the moment you put a modifier there, Mimei Olam or Kimei Olam, then it means days of old. And as you can imagine, the Christian Bibles go crazy on this. All these Christian Bibles that have a long rap sheet, the criminal rap sheet Bibles, they all translate it as eternity, from eternity. Only here in Micah 5:2. Do you understand this? This is unbelievable. So you take the King James Bible, the New American Standard, take the Living Bible. Oh, what a brilliant thing, the Living Bible. Without the Living Bible, you take an Amplified Bible, forget about it. Do I need to go through who our usual suspects are? So the usual suspects, there are exceptions, but the usual suspects, in every other place the word appears, the same words. They translate that ancient days. For instance, if you take a look at Isaiah 63, verse 9, how does it translate the word Yemei Olam? I'm talking to King James. It translates it as days of old. Let's say you go to Isaiah 63, verse 11, same words, Yemei Olam, days of old. That's King James. King James. In the book of Amos, chapter 9, verse 11, it says, Kimei Olam, same words. But the King James, the great King James.
He talked about in the King James Bible, in Micah chapter 5, verse 2, where it says, from everlasting, where it talks about the birth of the Messiah, and he kept referring to the Hebrew word olam. And the thing about olam is, if you go to the Aramean text, it's translated as eternities. And if you go to the Tanakh, the actual Jewish publication, this one, it's actually translated as everlasting also. And that's you could read about that, olam, everlasting, in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19. And I triple checked with the Greek. It's ion, and it means eternal. Now, he also talked about Jesus having two daddies, like David and Aaron can't have two daddies. And there was a prophecy that was made to King David by Samuel that after David would die, one of his descendants would sit on the throne forever. and that this person would be faithful forever, something Solomon was not. And so it says that David would be dead, and somebody would rise up from his bloodline, and they would build a house for his name. Now, if you go to Psalm 110, it says, the Lord said to my Lord. That's Jehovah said to Adon, which is short for Adonai. And if you go to Jeremiah, Adonai is the name of God. So it says a priest forever in order of Melchizedek. That's Psalm 110. And in the days of Isaiah the prophet, there was a king, King Uzziah, or Azariah. If you go to 2 Chronicles chapter 26, you read about him. And he knew of this prophecy. He was already a king. In fact, he was a righteous king. And if you look at what he did, you could assume that he was trying to fulfill that prophecy, the prophecy of Melchizedek. And because he was aware of that. And remember, everything was going really good for him. You know, he had victory on all the fronts. So what did he do? He went into the temple of God and he tried to behave like a priest. He literally tried to fulfill that prophecy, you know, by burning incense. And we all know from the Torah that when you do that, it's like it's symbolic of the prayers. It's like intercession for the prayers of the people, for the forgiveness after the sacrifice. He actually tried to do this. And what happened? God struck him with leprosy. And he was banished. In fact, he was never able to go to the temple of God ever again. Well, then we have Jesus that comes along, also from the bloodline of King David. And Jesus was without sin. And here's the thing. Jesus healed lepers. Multiple lepers. So it wasn't like Uzziah, who got struck with leprosy and was banished from the temple of the Lord. Jesus, on the other hand, was healing lepers. So, I'm going to leave you guys with a video on the Shroud of Turin.
The shroud has been studied actually by some of the top scientists and researchers in the world. And with all the scientific knowledge and equipment, we still do not know how the image of the shroud was produced.
And this is what I think continues to fascinate us about it. Regardless of what you believe, whether you are a Christian and a believer and believe that this is the image of the resurrected Christ, or if you just believe that there is some other extraordinary metaphysical event that causes this, you have to be fascinated by the fact that this extraordinary relic could not have been created by any means that in the 21st century we can identify.
Could the Shroud of Turin really be a divine relic? Tangible evidence of the existence of an almighty power.
In 2011, Italian scientists were able to prove that the Shroud of Turin was created by a supernatural flash of light, an unearthly flash of light. In my opinion, the Shroud of Turin is proof that Jesus transformed himself into a being of light and projected himself through the Shroud of Turin.